Free agency has begun in the NFL, and the Detroit Lions have made a couple moves so far. They're definitely not done. There's still a lot of holes left to fill, but so far, there's been a little bit of mixed feelings towards kind of the approach that the Lions have had. And it has been one full of kind of still not really addressing the defensive line. There have been moves that have brought back a couple of guys. There's been moves that have filled a couple of key positions, but overall, there really hasn't been a quote unquote huge splash signing. If you really want to talk about kind of the splash signing so far, you have to specifically mention Cade Mays, the center from the Carolina Panthers. It was a 3-year deal, $25 million. This is a move that is absolutely going to upgrade the center position. You mentioned the center position last year. It wasn't very, very good, right? It was a pretty poor play from the center position for anyone that played it throughout the year. It was just multiple guys at that point. A little bit about Cade, though, is this going to be an improvement? Right? Is he going to be probably the best center in the NFL? No, but he's a guy that if you look at statistically, if you look at grades wise, he was a top 10 center in the NFL last year, and he's still pretty young. And if you look at this compared to obviously the biggest contract for a center in the NFL, he is making less money in his 3 years than that center is making in 1 year. Like, this is a contract that is pretty friendly to Detroit. This is a contract, this is a player that I still don't think has reached his ceiling. I think he's going to continue to get better. He's, I believe, like 25, 26 years old, which is obviously nice. You got a guy that I think you can really trust there, and you're really trying to overall kind of build back this offensive line who has been really kind of torn apart a little bit. You talk about obviously Ragnow last year, right? You talk about Decker. Decker's gone. You talk about a couple of these other guys, right? Glasgow is gone. You're really going to have to rebuild this offensive line. And getting a Cade Myers, in my opinion, is a good start. And you really see kind of this continue with signing Larry Borom, the offensive lineman, 1 year. In my opinion, I think it's a swing tackle position. I don't think it's going to be a contract that is very large. In my opinion, I think he's going to be your Dan Skipper replacement. I know there's a lot of people that was really upset with this signing just because I think they're thinking, hey, this is either going to be your left tackle or your right tackle. He did have a press conference today in Detroit and basically said they haven't necessarily told him exactly what he's going to play. They haven't told him if he's going to be left tackle, right tackle. He doesn't necessarily know 100% of what his future is going to look like, but this is a 1-year deal. I think this is going to be your Dan Skipper situation, basically a replacement. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to be starting big games at right tackle or left tackle, right? And that kind of decision also has to really depend on what Penei Sewell does, right? As well, Penei Sewell, is he going to stay at right tackle? Is he going to move to left tackle? I think you're going to continue to see the Lions address this. I don't know if in free agency, definitely the draft, I can definitely see the Lions taking an offensive lineman pretty early on in the draft, but these were the basically first two signings for the Lions. The Lions really understand that when they were at their height, it was a really good offensive line. It was a really good run game. It was really relying on, obviously, at that time, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And David Montgomery is no longer here. It's Jahmyr Gibbs, and you really need to go and find a replacement. And that's exactly what they did with Isaiah Pacheco. 1 year, $1.81 million deal. Is Isaiah Pacheco going to be David Montgomery? No. David Montgomery is a better running back than Isaiah Pacheco. That's just what it is, right? You talk about Pacheco a couple years ago. If this was a signing, I would be absolutely thrilled. I like this signing. I think this is a good signing. I think he's going to be a good RB2. But obviously with his injuries in the past, he has kind of taken a step back. I think he's going to kind of be your short down running back. He's been very successful. You talk about really him at Kansas City. He's one of the best short yardage situation running backs in the entire NFL. He's also a pretty good blocker as well. I think out of like 90 so odd running backs, he was in the top 20 every single year in the last 3 years. Like, he's a guy that can block. That's exactly what you're going to look for. You're getting a guy that can probably take, in my opinion, 5 to 10 carries a game and block. you're getting a guy that can do that for $1.81 million. I don't think you can really complain about that. I think this is a underrated signing because you look at some of these other running backs, like James Conner got $3 million. You look at some other running backs as well that have been getting big deals. This is the type of signing you want to have when you have kind of an RB2, a guy that truly you can trust, a guy that can get the ball, but a guy that can black as well and can contribute. So I really like this Isaiah Pacheco signing for the Lions. And really, it was just continuing the offensive trend after that point because the Lions have someone returning that I'm really excited about. I'm really, really happy about. I don't think he's going to see the field very much, and I think rightfully so, and I think that's a good thing. And that is Teddy Bridgewater is coming out of retirement to come back to Detroit on a 1-year deal, I believe. I really like this. I really like Teddy. He was a really good backup. He's a guy that's a really good leader as well. He's a guy that seemed to love in Detroit. He's a guy that Dan Campbell seems to love. He's a guy that seemed to just love living, love playing in Detroit. And after Kyle Allen was signed away, it was going to be about who are you going to go get. And you got a guy that's been in Detroit. You got a guy that's a leader. And you got a veteran guy that can come in and really be probably a 1, maybe 2-year backup. And then obviously, in my opinion, I think you're going to see the Lions probably draft for the future of the quarterback in the NFL draft. I think that's exactly what's going to be. I know there's a lot of kind of alignment with like Haynes King. That could definitely be an interesting decision. I don't know exactly what the Lions have planned, but Teddy Bridgewater is back for another year. I really like this pickup for the Lions. I think just him in general, just the player, the person, just kind of the overall understanding of the system is definitely going to help. And obviously with Jared Goff, you don't need a quote unquote veteran guy to really guide him. But at the end of the day, like getting a guy like Teddy Bridgewater that's going to be a really good locker room presence is going to be absolutely huge because a lot of these guys are leaving, like a Taylor Decker, like a David Montgomery. Like those guys have been leaders. They are experienced veteran guys, and you're seeing the Lions kind of go a little bit more towards kind of the younger, really approach. And some of these leaders now are the more experienced guys with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with Penei Sewell. Jared Goff obviously has been there for a while. These young guys that were main picks a few years ago are now becoming the leaders of this team, and they're trying to really kind of go quote unquote towards more of a little bit of a youth movement, but guys that still have a little bit of experience as well. But when you do that, you really also want to bring back a couple of guys that have been key contributors to these teams. They're really guys that have helped this team out overall, and you have to mention guys like Malcolm Rodriguez. He's going to be back for another year. Rack Ya-Sin is back for another year, $4 million. He had a really, really good season. I really like this pickup for the Lions. He was really key, especially when the Lions had so many injuries in the secondary last year. You mentioned secondary. That's something that the Lions continue to need to address, and they did that a little bit earlier today with former Bucks cornerback, or basically DB. He's kind of like a nickel, but he can play multiple positions. You have to mention Christian Izien, 1-year deal, 3 interceptions, 165 tackles, 5 PBUs since entering the league in 2023. He actually intercepted Jared Goff a few years ago. You see the Lions needing to address this depth when it comes to the secondary, because I think he's going to be probably a Yamik Robertson replacement. I absolutely do. I think he's a guy that can play multiple positions. I think he's a guy that can be really impactful for the Lions, and he's been a pretty productive guy, especially at the Bucks. The Bucks fans didn't seem super happy that he left. He's a solid guy. Now, there's obviously guys on social media that's like, oh, he sucks. Like, this is why he signed a 1-year deal. Right? That's not necessarily the case. I think this is a really good pickup, and I really like the Lions continuing to address the secondary. But going back to continuing to bring guys back that have been around, guys that have been locker room kind of guys. I mentioned Malcolm Rodriguez. I mentioned Rack Ya-Sin. But you also have to mention Tom Kennedy, right? Tom Kennedy has been around for a really long time with, obviously, the wide receiver situation. Is Tom Kennedy going to be able to play a little bit? With also, you have to mention Khalif Raymond going to the Bears. He was a special teams guy. Can Tom Kennedy get that opportunity? Now, Christian Isian has played special teams as well, but that special team spot's going to be absolutely huge. And obviously, having Tom Kennedy come back is huge. Trevor Nowalski is back as well, which I'm really happy that he's back. He's been a key contributor. He's going to be a linebacker that's probably going to play quite a bit as well, but you're really trying again go towards more of this youth movement, more towards these guys that have shown potential, but also kind of letting some of these older guys walk that are wanting money, like a Taylor Decker. You obviously traded David Montgomery. These are hard decisions. I think there's still a long ways to go for the Lions. I think they still have to make several more moves. I think the defensive end position is absolutely necessary at this point. It really seems like it's Aiden Hutchinson and everyone else is like, like questioning. Ahmed Hassanin is still there, but obviously a 6th round pick. I think you're going to probably go more of like the veteran kind of guy. Cam Jordan has been a guy that's kind of been thrown out. I know Bosa has been thrown out there by some people. I don't necessarily see Bosa coming to the Lions, but maybe might go more of the veteran route. Try to really fill that kind of position. You can obviously go NFL draft as well. There's still positions, especially on the defensive side, that the Lions need to fill, that they need to continue to address. And I don't think they'll continue to be quiet. While they have signed guys, it's been pretty quiet. I do think the idea of a splashy move is probably not really happening, to be completely honest with you. The Lions do have a decent amount of cap space, and that was because they ended up restructuring Jared Goff's contract. They didn't end up going the full way. I think they left about $11-12 million on the table, but it opened up over like $30 million. I believe cap space is around 32 to 35 million. Most people try to keep 10 to 20 million for like the NFL draft for like unrestricted free agents, stuff like that. So I don't know exactly how much money, how many more signings the Lions will have, but it's going to be a really, really interesting approach for the Lions going forward because I still think there's still a lot, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that they need to really address. You're obviously going to be really dependent on continue to develop. It's really going to also depend on the secondary position as well. You have Brian Branch, you have Kirby Joseph. What are those guys going to look like? Are they going to be anything remotely to where they were? That's why you're seeing a couple of these signings in the defensive back room. We don't necessarily know, but I think they'll be completely fine. But it's also really about trying to get these guys to continue to step up. Some of these guys like Jack Campbell are really going to have to take that next step because Alex Anzalone is out the door. He's at the Bucks. So a lot of interesting things going on. A lot of still things that, in my opinion, the Lions need to address. But they've been doing it slowly but surely. I think fans not necessarily are super happy with everything. I think they really wanted a really big move. Obviously, Max Crosby is technically still out there, but he made a post that he's back with the Raiders. Trey Hendrickson was a guy that a lot of people really wanted as well. I just don't really see the Lions making a big splash, and I think Cade Mays would probably be the biggest one, but I could be surprised. But let me know in the comments what you think. Are you liking this overall free agency? Are you not liking it too much? I think the Lions are not done yet. I think the draft's going to be an absolutely huge one for Brad Holmes this year. I think he's going to absolutely have to hit on these guys. He's been pretty good at hitting guys early, but I think he's going to have to, again, have a really good draft in. He's done in the past, so we'll see. We'll see what the Lions continue to do. I'm interested to see who else they sign, how they kind of approach the defensive line, how they approach the defense, because I think offensively you look at really what you have, and I think you feel pretty fine for the most part, outside of maybe tight end, like a tight end 2, tight end 3, and maybe another offensive lineman or 2. I think it's going to be an interesting next couple of days, interesting next couple of weeks. We'll see what happens. I'll obviously talk about it more when stuff comes out, but if you like this, make sure to like, subscribe, comment as well. Try to pick up a couple more subscribers at least until Sunday. Would love to get to 100 subscribers before March Madness starts, but really appreciate everyone's support. If you like this, again, please comment, please share, subscribe, stuff like that. And obviously, once more news comes out, I'll talk about it in the near future. But thanks again, and we'll see what the Lions do going forward.